I was a hard-working carpenter who married Amanda, daughter of wealthy real estate developers. For 7 years we lived a seemingly happy life in our Boston suburb. Buying lottery tickets was our Friday tradition, something we did just for fun. Little did I know that the prenup her parents forced me to sign before our wedding would become so important. When we hit the jackpot, everything changed overnight. Before I tell you how my wife's $9 million jackpot win led to my homelessness and her ultimate downfall, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button to support my channel. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this prenup changed everything. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Massachusetts, the son of a plumber and a school secretary. From an early age, I learned the value of hard work and honest living. By the time I turned 25, I had built a reputation as a skilled carpenter with my own small business. I took pride in creating beautiful, functional pieces with my hands and earning every dollar through sweat and dedication. My life took an unexpected turn when I volunteered to help build display booths for a charity auction benefiting local homeless shelters. That was where I first saw Amanda Thompson. She was helping organize the event dressed in an elegant blue dress that matched her eyes perfectly. Amanda stood out not just for her beauty, but for how kindly she treated everyone around her, regardless of their status. When she came over to check on the progress of the booths, our eyes met and something electric passed between us. We started talking and hours flew by. Despite her privileged background as the daughter of Richard and Barbara Thompson, prominent real estate developers in Boston, Amanda seemed genuinely interested in my work and my background. We exchanged numbers, and I honestly expected never to hear from her again. Why would someone from her world want anything to do with someone like me? But the very next day she called and asked if I would like to grab coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a whirlwind romance that lasted 6 incredible months. When Amanda finally took me to meet her parents at their Beacon Hill mansion, their disapproval was immediate and obvious. Richard Thompson barely shook my hand, and Barbara kept asking pointed questions about my education and family connections. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a saw. What surprised me most was how fiercely Amanda defended me. She stood up to her parents, telling them that my character and how I treated her mattered more than my bank account. I fell even more in love with her that night. After dating for a year, I proposed to Amanda during a sunset picnic at the harbor. With tears in her eyes, she said yes without hesitation. We were so caught up in our happiness that we almost forgot about her parents and their expectations. That bubble burst quickly when Richard and Barbara insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Richard called me into his study one evening and explained in no uncertain terms that while they had accepted their daughter's choice, they needed to protect the family wealth. I understood their concerns even if they stung. What I did not anticipate was one unusual clause they insisted on including. The prenup stated that while our individual assets before marriage would remain separate, any windfall or lottery winnings during marriage would be considered shared marital property regardless of which spouse purchased the ticket. At the time, I thought nothing of it. The chance of winning anything substantial seemed so remote that I signed without argument. When I told Amanda I had signed, she hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. She thanked me for understanding her family's concerns and promised that money would never come between us. I believed her completely. Our wedding was held at the Thompson family estate with 300 guests in attendance. Most were friends and business associates of the Thompsons. My side of the church looked embarrassingly empty with just my parents, a few relatives, and some friends from work. Despite the imbalance, it was a beautiful day, and Amanda looked radiant as she walked down the aisle toward me. After the wedding, we moved into a modest 3-bedroom house that I spent months renovating. Amanda could have asked her parents for money for a bigger place, but she insisted on living within our means. I respected her for that choice. The first few years of our marriage were financially tight but genuinely happy. Amanda worked as a project coordinator at her father's real estate company while I grew my carpentry business. We budgeted, carefully saved where we could, and dreamed about our future together. One tradition we started was buying a lottery ticket every Friday night. It was never about seriously expecting to win. It was our way of dreaming together. We would pick up a bottle of wine, grab some takeout, buy a ticket, and spend the evening imagining all the things we would do if we ever hit the jackpot. Travel the world, start a family, set up a workshop where I could create furniture full-time rather than focusing on more lucrative renovation jobs, fund programs for underprivileged kids. Those evenings were some of my favorite memories of our marriage. Our 7th anniversary arrived on a crisp October weekend. I had spent evenings secretly working on a jewelry box for Amanda, carving intricate patterns into maple wood and lining it with velvet. I was excited to give her something made with my own hands rather than just buying a gift. Amanda seemed distracted when I gave her the box. She smiled and thanked me, but her mind appeared elsewhere. When I asked if everything was okay, she mentioned work pressure and some new development project her father had her overseeing. I did not push the issue, wanting to keep our anniversary weekend special. That Friday, I stopped by the convenience store as usual to grab wine dinner and our weekly lottery ticket. The cashier, Tom, had come to expect me every Friday. We chatted briefly about the Patriots game that weekend before I headed home. The next morning, Amanda left early for what she called an emergency at work. I spent the day catching up on paperwork for my business. With the weekend rush, I completely forgot about the lottery ticket still sitting in my wallet. Monday morning, while waiting for my coffee to brew, I remembered the ticket and decided to check the numbers online. What happened next still feels surreal when I think about it. The numbers on my screen matched the numbers on my ticket, all of them. According to the website, the jackpot was $9 million. I checked and rechecked, convinced I was misreading something. But there was no mistake. We had won. My hands trembling, I called Amanda at work immediately. Her reaction was not what I expected. Instead of screaming with joy or rushing home to celebrate, she sounded oddly subdued. She asked several questions about the ticket, when I bought it, and where it was now. Then she said she would be home soon with her parents. Her parents. Why would they need to be involved in our lottery win? When Amanda arrived with Richard and Barbara in tow, their focus was entirely on the ticket. Richard asked to see it, examined it carefully, and then engaged in a hushed conversation with Barbara and Amanda in the kitchen. I stood awkwardly in my own home, feeling like an outsider. That night was the beginning of a transformation I still struggle to comprehend. The Amanda went to bed with was not the same woman who woke up beside me the next morning. She was suddenly cold, calculating, and fixated on claiming the prize as quickly as possible. I suggested we take some time to plan, perhaps consult a financial advisor before claiming such a large sum. Amanda dismissed the idea immediately, insisting she needed to claim the ticket herself as soon as possible. When I asked why she needed to do it alone, she became defensive and accused me of not trusting her. To keep the peace, I reluctantly handed over the ticket, still believing we were in this together. Amanda disappeared for 3 days after claiming the prize. No calls, no texts, nothing. When she finally returned home, she arrived in a brand new Mercedes, wearing clothes I had never seen, carrying shopping bags from stores we had never been able to afford before. I barely recognized my own wife. What hurt more than the extravagant spending was discovering she had opened separate accounts for the lottery money. When I brought up the subject of our plans for the winnings, she laughed and said those had just been silly dreams. Now that there was actual money involved, she needed to be practical. Our first major argument erupted when I pointed out that the money should be shared. Amanda's response cut deep. She said I had contributed nothing to our marriage except a run-down house and mediocre carpentry skills. She claimed she had been carrying us financially for years through her job at her father's company. The lottery money, she declared, was her chance at independence. I did not recognize the person saying these cruel things. It was as if the money had stripped away a mask, revealing someone I had never truly known. The woman I loved had vanished, replaced by someone consumed with materialism and disdain for our life together. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda barely came home. When she did, she brought new friends. I had never met people who looked at me with thinly veiled contempt as they drank expensive champagne in our modest living room. They would talk about exclusive clubs, high-end shopping, and luxury vacations as if I was not even there. I tried everything to salvage our relationship. I suggested counseling. I reminded her of our history together, our dreams, the love we had shared. Amanda listened with growing impatience before finally snapping that perhaps I should accept reality. According to her, she had outgrown me. The final blow came when I discovered a business card from a divorce attorney while doing laundry. That night, I confronted Amanda directly. After initially denying it, she finally admitted she had been consulting with lawyers about ending our marriage. According to her, she had been unhappy for years but stayed because she felt financially trapped. The lottery win had given her the freedom she had always wanted. When I asked about the money, Amanda scoffed. She claimed the lottery winnings were solely hers because she had picked the numbers. The ticket, the win, everything belonged to her alone. In that moment, I realized money had not changed my wife. It had revealed who she truly was all along. 3 weeks after the lottery win, I was at my workshop finishing a cabinet installation for a client when a man in a suit appeared at the door. He served me with divorce papers right there in front of my customer. The humiliation of that moment burned deep, especially when the client awkwardly made an excuse to leave without the job being completed. That was just the beginning of my nightmare. When I returned home that evening, I found the locks changed. My belongings had been tossed into garbage bags and left on the front lawn for all the neighbors to see. Amanda watched from the window, refusing to even come outside to speak with me. When I tried to approach the house, she threatened to call the police. I spent that night sleeping in my truck, unable to comprehend how my life had fallen apart so completely in less than a month. The next day brought another shock. Amanda had filed a restraining order against me based on completely fabricated claims of threatening behavior. I had never raised my voice to her, let alone my hand, but suddenly I was portrayed as a dangerous, unstable person. With nowhere to go, I rented a small room in a rundown motel on the edge of town. It was all I could afford with my business rapidly declining. Amanda's family had significant influence in our community, and suddenly my phone stopped ringing. Regular clients canceled orders. Potential new clients never returned my calls. I later learned Richard Thompson had been spreading rumors about my mental stability and work quality. Friends I had known for years began avoiding me. Some believed the lies about me being abusive. Others simply did not want to get involved in such a messy situation. A few admitted that Richard Thompson had threatened their businesses if they maintained any connection with me. As my savings dwindled, I had to give up even the cheap motel room. For 2 weeks, I alternated between sleeping in my truck and crashing on the couch of the one friend brave enough to still speak to me. All while Amanda flaunted her new life on social media, posting pictures from exotic locations with her new boyfriend, a real estate investor from her father's circle. The divorce papers offered me nothing. Not a penny of the lottery money, not even my tools, which were still in our garage. According to Amanda's high-powered legal team, I had contributed nothing to the marriage and deserved nothing in return. They even tried to claim I owed Amanda money for supposed improvements she had made to my business over the years. Depression hit me hard. I stopped eating regularly, lost weight, barely slept. The betrayal cut deeper than the financial loss. 7 years of what I thought was a loving marriage had apparently meant nothing. Every memory now seemed tainted. Every happy moment called into question. Had she ever truly loved me? Or had I just been a rebellious phase before she returned to her privileged world? At my lowest point, I seriously considered signing whatever papers they put in front of me just to end the nightmare. What was the point of fighting? Amanda had millions of dollars and a team of the best lawyers money could buy. I had nothing and nobody. The turning point came from an unexpected source. I was parked outside a hardware store trying to scrounge up enough cash for materials to complete a small job when I ran into Gary, a former client whose kitchen I had renovated 2 years earlier. He asked why I had not returned his calls about a new project, and the whole story came tumbling out of me. Gary listened quietly, then told me his brother-in-law was a lawyer specializing in family law. He suggested I at least get a consultation before giving up. When I explained I could barely afford food, let alone legal fees, Gary offered to loan me the money for the initial consultation. At first I refused out of pride, but Gary was persistent. He said my work had increased his home value significantly, and he considered this repayment for a job well done. With nothing left to lose, I finally agreed to meet with the lawyer Gary recommended. That decision would change everything. Sarah Johnson's law office was modest compared to the gleaming downtown building where Amanda's legal team worked, but it was neat and professional. Sarah herself turned out to be a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who listened carefully as I explained my situation. When I finished my story, Sarah asked a question that would prove pivotal. Had I signed a prenuptial agreement? When I confirmed that I had, she requested to see a copy. I explained that all my papers were still in the house, but I remembered the main points, including the unusual clause about lottery winnings. Sarah's expression changed immediately. She asked me to repeat exactly what I remembered about that specific clause. When I explained that any windfall or lottery winnings during marriage would be considered shared marital property regardless of which spouse purchased the ticket, Sarah actually smiled for the first time. According to her, that clause might be our golden ticket. She explained that prenuptial agreements are binding contracts. If the agreement specifically stated that lottery winnings were marital property, then Amanda could not claim the money was hers alone regardless of who purchased the ticket or whose name was on it. My first glimmer of hope in weeks quickly faded when I realized we had no proof. The copy of the prenup was in the house I could no longer enter, and Amanda's parents would surely deny that clause existed if asked. Sarah was undeterred. She explained that all legal documents like prenups must be filed with the court at the time of marriage. She could request the official copy directly from county records. Additionally, we needed to gather evidence that I had purchased the winning ticket. Fortunately, I had paid with my credit card at the convenience store that Friday, as I always did. The transaction would be on my statement providing a paper trail. Over the next few days, Sarah worked with remarkable efficiency. She obtained a copy of the prenuptial agreement, which indeed contained the clause exactly as I remembered it. She also subpoenaed surveillance footage from the convenience store showing me purchasing the ticket plus my credit card statement verifying the transaction. Armed with this evidence, Sarah filed a countersuit challenging Amanda's divorce terms and asserting my right to half of the lottery winnings as per the prenuptial agreement. She also requested an emergency hearing and a freeze on the lottery funds until the matter was resolved. The reaction from Amanda's legal team was immediate and panicked. They requested a private meeting during which they tried to intimidate Sarah with their firm's reputation and resources. Sarah simply placed the prenup on the table, pointed to the lottery clause, and asked if they wanted to continue this discussion in court with media present. They left ashen-faced. When the emergency hearing date arrived, Amanda appeared confident, walking into the courtroom with her parents and 3 attorneys. That confidence crumbled when our evidence was presented. The judge, an older woman with shrewd eyes, studied the prenup carefully before asking Amanda directly if she contested its validity. Amanda claimed I had pressured her into adding that specific clause, which made no sense given that her parents had been the ones insisting on the prenup in the first place. When Richard Thompson was called to testify, he inadvertently confirmed that his legal team had drafted the entire document, including the lottery clause, specifically to protect their daughter. The judge did not hide her disapproval of Amanda's attempts to circumvent a contract she and her family had created. She issued a temporary order, freezing all the lottery funds, and scheduled a full hearing for the following month. As we left the courtroom, I caught Amanda's gaze. The hatred in her eyes was matched only by the shock that her plan was falling apart. News of the case spread quickly. Local media picked up the story of the lottery winner, whose prenup might cost her millions. The irony was not lost on anyone. The very document intended to protect the wealthy family's assets had become my salvation. Several journalists reached out for interviews, but Sarah advised against speaking publicly while the case was ongoing. Amanda grew increasingly desperate as the court date approached. She tried to transfer large sums to offshore accounts, resulting in the judge appointing a financial monitor to oversee the lottery funds. She attempted to claim we had been separated at the time of the win, but our joint credit card statements and mortgage payments proved otherwise. She even tried to bribe the convenience store owner to say I had not been the one to purchase the ticket, but he refused and reported the attempt to our lawyer. After 4 grueling months of legal battles, the final judgment came down. Based on the clear language in the prenuptial agreement that both parties had signed, the $9 million lottery winnings were deemed marital property to be divided equally. After taxes and legal fees, I received a check for $4.5 million. As I stood on the courthouse steps with that check in my hand, I felt no triumph, only relief that justice had prevailed, and sadness for what could have been if money had not revealed the truth about the woman I had loved. In the aftermath of the court decision, Amanda fell into a deep depression. According to mutual acquaintances, she had already spent nearly $1 million on luxury cars, designer clothes, exotic vacations, and a down payment on a penthouse apartment she could no longer afford. The remaining money was supposed to fund her new glamorous lifestyle indefinitely. Instead, she had to sell most of her purchases at a significant loss to cover legal fees and other debts. Despite having every reason to feel vindicated, I found no joy in her downfall. The woman I had married, the one I thought I knew, was gone forever. Whether she had ever truly existed remained a question I still cannot answer. With my portion of the money, I made thoughtful choices. First, I moved to Portland, Maine, where nobody knew me or my story. I bought a modest house with a large detached garage that I converted into a woodworking studio. Instead of returning to renovation work, I focused on my true passion, crafting handmade furniture. Without the pressure of making ends meet, I could take the time each piece deserved. I also established a scholarship fund for young people entering trade schools. Every year, 10 students receive funding for tools, tuition, and living expenses while they learn valuable skills. Watching these young craftspeople develop their talents has become one of my greatest joys. 3 years after the divorce, I heard through a mutual friend that Amanda had filed for bankruptcy. Her lavish spending had continued even after losing half the lottery money, and she had made several bad investments on her new boyfriend's advice. That same boyfriend disappeared as soon as the money ran out. Her parents, having lost significant wealth in a market downturn, could not bail her out completely. I ran into Amanda purely by chance 5 years after our divorce. I was in Boston for a furniture exhibition when she approached me at a coffee shop. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and jeans. She looked older, tired, but somehow more real than she had in years. She asked if she could sit down, and I agreed. What followed was an hour of honesty that had never existed in our marriage. Amanda admitted that she had been planning to leave me even before the lottery win, but had stayed because she was comfortable and secure. The money had simply accelerated her timeline and amplified her worst qualities. She apologized for her cruelty and for wasting 7 years of my life. I found myself able to forgive her, not for her sake but for my own. Holding on to anger had never served me, and seeing her humbled brought no satisfaction. We parted with a handshake and the mutual understanding that our paths would never cross again. In time, I met someone new. Julia is a botanist who values simplicity and authenticity above all else. She loves me for who I am, not what I can provide or represent. When I told her my full story, she listened without judgment, and then asked to see my latest furniture designs. Her focus on the present rather than my past helped me finally close that chapter of my life. The greatest lesson from my experience is that money does not change people so much as it reveals them. Amanda and her family had always valued wealth and status above all else. The lottery win simply brought that truth to the surface. I had been blinded by love and had seen only what I wanted to see. I also learned that justice sometimes comes from unexpected places. The very prenuptial agreement that had once symbolized her family's distrust became the instrument of fairness in the end. Life has a way of creating balance if you have the patience to wait for it. For those of you going through your own betrayals or difficult times, remember that what matters most is not what happens to you, but how you choose to respond. Choose growth over bitterness. Choose to build something new, rather than mourning what you lost. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led you to a better place? Would you have handled my situation differently? Please like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more life lessons from unexpected places. And share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to our greatest blessings. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the prenup that was meant to protect others might just be protecting you.